Kia ora, good evening. The sun was out today, but it hasn't provided much relief for Nelsonians. At least 130 households remain under evacuation tonight, with hundreds more at risk.
And as the clean-up from days of rain, flooding and slips continues, some tough questions are being asked. Alexa Cook reports.
Nelson's Hills on the move, simply unable to hold firm after more than a metre of rain in 4 days, leaving 350 homes at risk.
I think we've got about 130 that were evacuated.
People like Brett, who had to evacuate himself early on Saturday.
I heard a significant amount of sound, rocks and breaking concrete and so forth. So I didn't mess around.
His home is one of 50 red stickered, deemed unsafe to live in, within the Tahunanui and Rocks Road area. This is where the region's greatest concentration of slip-affected homes are.
So we're moving very quickly to try and reassess as much as possible and get people back into homes.
Authorities briefly took Newshub behind the cordon, where not even residents are allowed because it's too unsafe. How much is it moving by?
So at the moment we're seeing movement in the centimetres range. It's not in the metres range, and it is still moving slightly. We're collecting as much data as we can to try and understand how much it's slowing down, allowing people to maybe do some controlled entries.
Something that Mac Crampton is an expert on. In 1970, he was an engineer for the council when flooding and slips killed 2 people.
It was real devastation for the people in this area.
Devastation that he says sparked major changes and spending for the council. That included more geotechnical surveying on land for housing developments.
So are there areas that you look at today that you think that shouldn't have housing on it?
Well, the answer is yes, if we'd known what we know now.
This home was evacuated and red-stickered in 2011 when that hillside above it came down. It's been red-stickered yet again and has been left here as a monument to what happened back then. An area called the Tahunanui Slump.
By the time I retired, if it had come up for development, that block of land, it would not have been approved for subdivision. But that's like a lot of areas in New Zealand.
This past week giving Nelsonians a front row seat to massive slips and raging rivers. A sight that isn't deterring red-stickered residents from returning eventually.
I'd be back there like a shot. I love it. It's a wonderful spot to live.
A love for this city no amount of damage can diminish.
Kia ora, Alexa. So are there concerns for those evacuated homes?
Well, Mike, there is. Police I talked to today say they're now worried about looting, about people sneaking in through those cordons and visiting those evacuated homes. So they're stepping up their presence here at the many cordons across the city. They've also brought in the Defence Force to help man the cordons and keep people out that aren't supposed to be in there. Now, when it comes to when the people can actually return home, well, that's all still up in the air. There needs to be many days of sun and time for these hillsides to dry out and stop moving. So it means really that authorities can't give a date, a time or any information to residents as to when they can return home. So it's a pretty stressful time for many, but it's hoped that this rain coming at the end of the week doesn't extend the amount of time they're going to spend out of their homes, because they don't want them to return home if there's any risk at all of further slipping.
Alexa Cook live from Nelson, Tinakwe.
The main road between Blenheim and Nelson could be closed for months.
Initial assessments show parts of State Highway 6 have been completely wiped out and communities still cut off are relying on air support for fresh food and water. Kaylee Callahan reports from Marlborough.
Many of Marlborough's roads look just like this, mountains of mud blocking both directions. Queen Charlotte Drive undrivable until contractors can dig their way through. From the air, the devastation is immense. Hillsides have slipped away, homes destroyed. Some roads on State Highway 6 just don't exist anymore.
Just isn't covered with debris. The road's broken right down to the foundations.
Wakakotahi road managers and geotechnical teams have been assessing the extent of the damage from the air.
So I've lived here in Marlborough all my life. I actually grew up in the Marlborough Sound, so to see it firsthand was pretty disheartening, pretty sad for me.
State Highway 6, the main route between Blenheim and Nelson, remains impassable, with no time frame on when it could reopen.
I think weeks could be a little bit too conservative, longer than that.
A trip that would normally take an hour and a half is now a 534-kilometre drive of at least 7 hours, not including the inevitable delays on State Highway 6 between Brightwater and Murchison. Contractors are working around the clock to reopen the alternative route through State Highway 63 as soon as they can.
Because that's the one that we can have the most effect of in a short amount of time. We're still thinking over the weekend.
River levels in Marlborough have dropped, revealing just how much debris and slash has washed down the Waido River, piling up just metres from the State Highway bridge above. There's still a lot of mahi to do in low-lying townships. Some streets are swamped. Others are in desperate need of drinking water. Marlborough helicopters ferrying precious food for every man and their dog to those stranded in the Sounds.
At the moment we've got whānau who are isolated at D'Urville Island, Madsen Bay.
For many communities, air support is the only connection to the outside world.
The damage is pretty extensive, and I don't think we would have got a gauge as to how much damage there is if we didn't get up and see it from a height.
But with a break in the weather, the clean-up is underway.
Well, Kaylee's with us now live. And Kaylee, there's just been an update on the roads. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Ingrid, it's just been confirmed that State Highway 63 won't reopen this week, but it's the more likely option next week, and that will be revisited on Monday. As for State Highway 6 behind me, well, they're only letting residents through in the nearby areas here at the moment, but the plan going forward is a staged reopening, trying to get up to that Rye Valley area to open up the road so they can get in and out, and those communities in between can get in and out as well. But from there, between Rye Valley and Nelson is the worst affected area, and it's expected to take weeks at least to get a fix there. And from what we've seen over the past couple of days, it's not going to be an easy job.
OK, tēnā koe, Kaylee, thanks very much for the update.